I call to order the September 21st, 2017 business meeting and asked our administrator, please take the roll.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. We are joined this morning with Mr. Chris Story, representing County Council, and Mary Rathke is serving as your clerk to the board. I'll go ahead and start with the roll. Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Believe it or not, I'm here.
Chair Bernard.
Here, I don't believe it.
Must be a story.
Please join me for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will be meeting announce that the board, we'll recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Housing Authority Board for the next item. And with us today is one of those board members, Paul Reynolds.
Thank you.
And the Housing Authority consent agenda.
Okay, the Housing Authority consent agenda, we have in the matter of writing off uncollectible accounts for the first quarter of fiscal year 2017-2018, and approval to apply for a 2017 resident opportunity for self-sufficiency service coordinator grant.
Okay, any questions? Any commissioner wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the Housing Authority consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the Housing Authority consent agenda. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just for the benefit of the public, because we are writing off bad debt of $7,166.10, just so the public is aware that we don't just write it off and nothing happens. The people who fail to make their payments are put on a national list and do not get subsidized housing until such time as they've cleared their debt. So it's not a situation where they just take advantage of the situation and are able to move on and do it again. And I think the public needs to know that there are some controls in the system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is citizen communication. We have, what?
Need to make the announcement.
Oh, yes, I'd like to announce that the board will adjourn as the Housing Authority and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners for the next item. Good thing I did that because you would have been talking to a different group. So Les, you're up.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Good morning. Les Poole, Gladstone. Yeah, believe it or not, I'm here. Buried in the shrubs out here is a sign that says there's a land use application on a piece of property right next door. A land use hearing or something coming. Is that about the courthouse? Do you know? I just happened to pass it on the way here.
Where was it?
And I know we're going to be doing a courthouse, and I'm curious which piece it goes on.
That's a
It's gonna
city,
be-
that's a city notification, not a county notification.
Okay, yeah, just, you know, and I'm very pleased that we're going to see a new courthouse, by the way, for a lot less money and a lot better financing options than what we're seeing in Multnomah County. And I know it's one of those things, I don't see a building out here yet, so we're not going to start talking about the artwork, but we really need to make it happen, and we need to work with Oregon City to preserve the old courthouse. That place is awesome. So enough about the building. I wanted to speak about decorum. When the board convened in January and things moved along, I made a point to talk about decorum in meetings. We're having issues. There seems to be communication floating around that you can come down here and just raise holy hell. We haven't seen it in our commission meetings. We haven't seen it here. Hopefully we won't. I invite people to come. I invite people that are angry to come, but keep your head on. But we're seeing in this country, and specifically more so in Portland, some conduct that is simply complete violation of the Oregon Constitution, which gives you better speech rights. It actually goes further than the U.S. Constitution. And I'm just real concerned about people being shouted down. I'm concerned about meetings being interrupted. They let them go wild in Portland, and then finally we had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, lack of better description, lowering up, and then the mayor magically solves the problem by enforcing the law. We have a good sheriff's team here. We have a wonderful place to live, and it's scary enough sometimes to come down here. I sometimes make it look pretty easy. There's times I'm in the front row, and, you know, depending on the subject or how close to home it is, you all know it's not easy. So when people show up down here, they have to feel comfortable enough to feel like they're being heard. And then when you show up to speak on anything, and you've got a bunch of, as I say, hellraisers in the room, that will not be allowed here. And I'm not saying I need to enforce it, but we're not going to see that here. We're real lucky to have this forum, and you all know I'm speaking for a lot more people than myself. I don't come down here to talk about my backyard. I come down to talk about our backyards and our county. And I don't think I speak for 400,000, but I speak for more than myself. And as always, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Little, please introduce yourself and tell us where you live, and you showed up just in time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. My name is John Little, and I live in Oak Grove, 15111 Southeast Lee. My issue is we have an abandoned houses, but I am more concerned about one house, a block south of me at 15212, owned by a man by the name of Dave Scott. And it burnt about 10 years ago, and it is a total mess, and the rats are moving in, and it's not secured. It's got a big hole in the back of the building where you could go in. I have not been in. I'm afraid to go in it. It was a house for homeless people, but I think that has stopped. It's so bad that uninhabitable. And I have gone 6 months ago. I went to all your boards and commissions here in the system, and everybody shook their head. Yes, I understand, but there doesn't seem to be anything they can do about it. Evidently, there are no abandoned home regulations on the books that they can deal with. So this has been a real issue, and it doesn't take a brain surgeon to stop at that 15212, get out of your car and walk around the house, if you can get through the berry bushes, to see what the problem is. There is a hole in the roof. We looked it up on Google. It looks way worse from Google than it does in person. Looks like a bomb was dropped in the middle of the house. And I'm just coming here to try to point out that abandoned homes, we've got a couple more in the community that are causing problems. I'm sure the police are going crazy over this issue, but it's just a really unsightly mess. And I don't know what I expect you to do. I want you to know about it.
I think we have some ideas. Paul has been working on this issue a while. We have actually done some outstanding work with abandoned homes. And Paul, go ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul. Good morning.
Yeah, well, I happen to live in Oak Grove myself, so I can tell you that there's a few programs. One's a neighborhood livability project that's led by the sheriff's office and the district attorney to deal with what we call, nuisance homes. And there's also our code enforcement. So if you have rats, that's possibly a safety health issue. And also if there is something that kids would wander into or people would wander in to get hurt, that's also a safety issue. So We got your name and number, and we'll direct that, but if you, possibly, you may need to file a complaint. Have you been in touch with code enforcement?
I've been in touch with the Sheriff's Department. I've been to your enforcement office. I've been to your office and talked to
Did you file
Dan Chandler.
Did you file a form and sign it for?
Oh, I think I did, yeah. I've filled out a lot of paperwork.
There is a file in code enforcement
Okay.
office.
So I'll look into that for you, and we'll get a hold of you.
The reason I'm here is I just want to spur this issue on, and if it's it seems to me that the people I've talked to here in the county offices are kind of throwing their hands in the air and saying there's nothing we can do. Well, this has been an issue for 10 years. Maybe not 10, but let's go 6, 5, you know.
One of those.
It didn't become an issue on the day it went on fire. The fire department doesn't even want to burn it down. It's not safe for them to enter. So,
We'll take a look.
We'll take a look and go get a hold of you.
thank you. Thank you.
So we have his number because,
No, I'm going to get it.
okay.
Yeah.
'cause
We need your
it must
contact
have your
info.
name on
Thank
it.
you.
Got it on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll be glad to.
Thanks.
Excuse me, I know it's probably out of order here, but guess who lived between his home and this home when that house across the street burned down? Yours truly.
Oh,
I'm
really?
extremely familiar with this, and I haven't seen my neighbor since I moved 5 years ago. Shame on me. But 5 years ago, it was a problem, and sadly, it's a beautiful piece of property that someone's paying taxes on, and there's a burnout Hulk there. So I apologize for jumping in, but I'll be sure and connect with John and see what I can do to maybe help. Thank you.
Yeah, we just hooked to the satellite. We can see the hole in the roof.
You did the same thing?
Yeah.
Well, Santa shouldn't have any problem getting in that one.
Now,
Yes.
so with that, we're going to move on to we don't have any hearings or anything today, so the next item is the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Got to read it first.
Oh, you got to read it first?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, today's consent agenda. Under Housing and Human Services, approval of a revenue agreement with CareOregon for the primary care incentive payment model per member per month incentive program, Beavercreek, Sunnyside, and Gladstone. Approval of a revenue agreement with CareOregon for the primary care incentive payment model per member per month incentive program, Sandy. Under the Department of Transportation and Development, approval of Amendment Number 2 to the Intergovernmental Agreement Number 28216 with Oregon Department of Transportation for the 122nd Avenue and 132nd Avenue Sidewalk Connections Project. Under Elected Officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the State of Oregon and the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office for participation in the Oregon Motor Carrier Safe Action Plan. Request by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office to apply for the DUII grant with the State of Oregon, or the Oregon State Sheriff's Association for the 2017-2018 grant year, and request by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office for acceptance of a grant award from the Oregon State Sheriff's Association for the Safety Belt Grant Program. Under Business and Community Services, approval of a local government grant from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department for the Barton Park Day Use Area Restroom Replacement. Under Technology Services, approval to purchase from an established GSA contract with Carasoft Technology Corporation for the Acquia Housing Services and Technical Migration Support for the Drupal Content Management System on the Clackamas are on the county internet website. Under Water Environment Services, approval of a resolution to enter a joinder to trust agreement for insurance coverage through the Special Districts Association of Oregon for Water Environment Services, and approval of a goods and services contract between Water Environment Services and Jacoby Corbons, Inc. for the carbon replacement at the Tri-City Wastewater Resource Recovery Facility. And that concludes today's consent agenda.
Would anybody like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Next item is County Administrator update.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of items to share with you this morning. The first is that the Resource Conservation and Solid Waste Division in our Department of Transportation and Development, they work with food vendors at the county fair every year to try and recover food scraps for composting. And this year they were successful in securing the participation and interest of a whole host of additional vendors into the program for the first time. And the program, it's really cooking. They were able to total up something in the range of 40,000 pounds of food scraps from the county fair and the vendors at the county fair that have been collected and then composted since 2014. And I just wanted to do a tip of the hat to our staff there in the program for the good work that they're doing. Also wanted to make mention that their booth at the fair won first prize this year by the fair committee, so good job there. And then the other item I wanted to share with you was that our Health, Housing, and Human Services Behavioral Health Division staff trained some 70 Milwaukee high school staffers last month in suicide risk identification techniques. You recall we had a presentation here just a little bit ago about the incidence of suicide. The program that our Behavioral Health Division provides, it promotes what's called question, persuade, and refer, which teaches community members how to recognize that a person may be experiencing thoughts of suicide, and then helps folks know how to offer first aid until more experienced help might be available. The Milwaukee high school community, they lost a freshman to suicide this last year, and they're committed to learning how they can better work together to prevent future tragedies there. Staff reported that last month's session was very productive, and in part because the school has an active mental health team now and is implementing a suicide prevention protocol there. And I just, again, wanted to give a shout out to our behavioral health staff for doing that work. That's it.
Great, that's the mental health first aid class that I took.
Yes.
It was very valuable, very, very good. So first up, we have Commissioner Communications, and it's Commissioner Fisher.
So last week, Commissioner Humberston and I were in Washington, D.C., and we were able to connect with almost all of our delegation in Oregon. We did not connect with Congressman Walden, but we connected with the offices. And we had quite the agenda, and I'll just touch on the things that I focused on in lobbying, and then when Commissioner Humberston has his time, he can connect on the issues that he was concerned about. But first and foremost, we connected with the Army Corps of Engineers on our partnership to take back the Willamette Falls locks. There is so much going on in that the Army Corps has done a disposition study. We have commented, all of the members of our delegation have commented, and that project is moving forward. There is so much excitement and commitment from everyone about taking back our locks. And hopefully before too long, with the state commission that has happened with Oregon statute, we have a state commission that will determine which governmental entity will be in charge of the locks. That's very exciting. So we had good conversation about that. We had much conversation about healthcare in our country with everyone. In fact, at the time that we were to be meeting with Congressman Schrader, he was actually summoned to the White House to discuss healthcare. So it was quite timely. We met with his staff and let him know what our concerns were, just making sure that our residents in Clackamas County continue to have access to healthcare. It's very important, and very receptive response. And then the other issue that we both, Commissioner Humberson and I tag team on because it's so important, but I'm going to let him talk about most of it, but it's the issue of I-205. We all know that we got a transportation package from our legislature, which will really help our communities in dealing with some of our road issues and congestion, but we did not get 205. So we had quite the time in a meeting with the U.S. Department of Transportation. I mean, just getting through that security to get to the meeting was quite an event. But in talking about what the new criteria is to access some federal support for I-205, it's quite comprehensive, and I believe, are uniquely situated given our urban, rural, and how important it is for our agricultural community to move goods through 205. That gives us I think, a more priority focus given the unique aspects of our county. So I am working hard, we're all working hard, I know we are, on that issue, and so I just wanted to mention that. And then just some other things that I haven't reported on that I've been doing. This Safe Place, we have our steering committee. There is an effort and a concern to establish some child care at Safe Place. I was involved years ago. In fact, my child, who's now 21, was an infant at the time that I was involved in this committee in Multnomah County to do court care. And it's so interesting seeing that we are looking at sort of replicating that model that Multnomah County did in Clackamas so that families that are experiencing domestic violence and serious issues have a safe place for the children to be cared for while those things are happening. So we're working with Administrator Krupp and I know Commissioner Savas, and we're looking at a way to provide some seed money that could be leveraged for other resources for child care. And then I just have to mention, I just can't let it pass without mentioning how much fun I had yesterday driving around Oregon City with Mayor Holliday. Not only did I see firsthand the landslide that occurred and all of the intricacies that went on with the landslide in Oregon City, I also got a tour, an inside tour of where he's wanting to place the Public Works project. I saw on site where the Librarians was filmed here in Oregon City. We had a tour of the Cove, we had a tour of what's happening around Clackamas Community College, and most insightful was where Mayor Holliday got in a car crash on McLaughlin when he was 19 years old. So we had some good stories, and it's always wonderful going around our communities with our community leaders and getting that insight. So I just wanted to mention that as one of the highlights of the week.
Great. Commissioner Humberston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as Commissioner Fisher pointed out, we spent 3 whirlwind days in Washington, D.C., talking to our lobbyists as well as the congressional contingent. And you covered the transportation issue fairly well. I would say that we also included I-5 in that discussion, in that the bottlenecks for both are causing all of us problems, including our business community. And we were able to make the point quite clearly that with the advent of the containers leaving the port, that we have quite a bit more truck traffic on the road, and that's contributing to the congestion. So fixing this problem is a high priority for the region. I also had the opportunity to discuss the cross-laminated timber. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And we are slowly moving forward and building a coalition of people, including our environment, and most especially including our environmental community, who are interested in pursuing a pilot project on this. If this goes forward like we hope, albeit it's a little slow, it will help our rural communities and provide jobs in the rural communities. The additional benefit there, of course, is that you don't necessarily have to have people driving 40 miles to go to work if we can do this. So looking forward to making that happen. What I did learn about hiatus was interesting. It really only means there's no Tuesday and Thursday meetings. Everything else keeps happening. So just a few of the things that I was participating in this 2 weeks is the Oregon Opportunity Network Awards Gala for those folks that have worked so hard on housing the less fortunate. Went to the Fiala Farms celebration and harvest, excuse me. Oh, not yet. It's going to happen. The Fiala Farms celebration. And also to the Rhodey Rising Footbridge celebration, the rebuilding of the footbridge there. Most of us were able to attend that. We participated once again in the river cleanup, hauling trash out of the Clackamas River. Went to Clackamas County. This will not surprise anybody. Went to Clackamas County Uncorked, where I discovered a really nice new bourbon that's locally made. So I bought a couple of those, and it was a very nice event. Then the Labor Day picnic. We also attended the Labor Day picnic this year and enjoyed that very much. And then finally, of course, there's always honeydews at home and outside work to do, so I managed to move about 10 yards of chips and start bucking up a whole bunch of firewood to get a little exercise. And on an even more personal note, I started my running program again, so I am determined to get back in shape after 2 years of campaigning and having an absolutely discombobulated personal schedule that now seems to be settling down so I can get some exercise. Thank you. Dog. Oh, the dog, yes. Yeah, that's part of my exercise program. The dog runs with me. This is Caleb, and he's a fellow who likes to cuddle. His favorite place is right next to someone, or even better, on someone's lap. His ideal home will be calm and quiet with no scary or startling distractions and children over 13 years old. His people will need to gently introduce him to new places and activities and help him gain confidence. He wants to be brave and learn all he can about the world. Can you give him that kind of home? For more information about Caleb and other adoptable dogs, please contact Clackamas County Dog Services at 503-655-8628 or www.clackamas.us/dogs. Thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Savas.
Yes, well, we have not, actually this coming Tuesday will be our first work session where we'll all be here after our break, and there's been a number of issues related to transportation that we need to talk about. As was alluded to earlier, housing's related to a lot of this, and you know, I think people have asked me how I got involved in housing, and almost every discussion now on transportation or forum has an element on housing because they're virtually directly related. And so we had even a session yesterday on housing. So it's a very hot topic, and on Monday or Tuesday, we were, one of the sessions we attended on this housing forum was related to gentrification and how that impacts neighborhoods. And again, we're seeing, you know, we're in a good spot. We're in a good spot regionally because Portland's experiencing and going through the learning curve right now of how those neighborhoods are impacted. And we're seeing real life examples of what's gone right, and actually, for most importantly, why these folks are gathered around and working on this, what's gone wrong. And maybe how to do it better to protect some of these neighborhoods. I think Martha and I were in that particular session. So it was, again, great and made some good contacts, so hopefully we'll continue that dialogue. We, as Thursday morning, following the JPAC meeting, very interesting dialogue going on, and on that is really and Commissioner Fisher alluded to it when she was talking about their discussion with the U.S. DOT about goods and services and moving goods, and how important that is. And I think that what's lost is that, at least it seems to be respectfully, I'll be respectful of this, but at the JPAC table, there's very little emphasis on goods and services and freight and freeway movements and so forth. It's typically about transit moving people and not about freight. And, you know, it's important when you talk about, you know, goods and services, because that relates to really employers, and employers employ people, and people are us. It's everyone around us, and we're seeing businesses actually moving outwardly from the center because they cannot either get their employees to work or cannot move their goods and services in and out of their work. So it's really creating a lot of grief, and I-205 is obviously congested as other highways, and now there's talk about how we fund other phases and bottlenecks. But you know, this morning discussion about some of the anti-car comments, you know, I have to always put in there, well, okay, if you've got that belief, you got to realize that when anti-car is also probably going to be anti-moving goods and services indirectly if you take up travel lanes and dedicate them for other purposes. That creates hardships, and you know, I think nothing better than the recession of 2007 to us crawling out of that in 2013, that the legislature learned that when employers are impacted and they're not employing people, that there's less revenue coming into the state. And if there's less revenue coming into the state, there's less funds for social services, health care, all those things that we all care about. So there's a direct relationship. So we've got to be cognizant that a good economy and ability to move goods and services and people is important, and we need to have a balanced approach. It cannot be unbalanced. I even wrote an article about a balanced approach to our transportation, and so I hopefully will be able to convey that. And I really need to have a work session with ourselves, really talk about how we have a work session on transportation and what some of the trends are becoming, and how our nexus between what seems to be more of a metropolitan type of design versus a more suburban, you know, Clackamas County type of situation, how you integrate those needs and keep those businesses and employers employing people, keeping them alive so that we can again have a strong, balanced economy. So that's been what I've been working on pretty significantly, but this housing thing has been taking up a considerable amount of time, and I look forward to us having more sessions like we did yesterday as we go forward. The other thing I've thought of interest that came back, I guess, is, you know, and after this morning it seems to be even more important, is that National Association of Counties is assembling a caucus, and I think the focus appears to be transportation. And putting together perhaps a large county caucus to brainstorm on some transportation solutions, I'm presuming, and some other related aspects of that. So I think that's we have a lot to talk about, and how we shape that. And I also learned that I-205 stacked up relatively well coming out of that meeting with the U.S. DOT as far as actually scoring extremely high on it, on the project's capacity to meet that movement of goods and services, that it ranked really high. So we have to really realize that if it's ranked really high as a need and a solution, that obviously the problem itself speaks for itself. And that's what I have for today.
Great. Commissioner Schrader.
Well, hi, everyone. Good morning. Well, wow, there has been a lot going on, and I think the majority of my time at this point, I want to thank my colleagues for, they're going to be filling in for me next week as I travel around the state, visiting all of the counties. There are 36 counties in the state of Oregon, and we, as a metropolitan county, are really moving forward to work very closely with them on housing issues, as well as timber issues, and actually at this point as well as fire issues. This past week I had an opportunity to go to our district down in Newport, where we met with all the coastal counties. And again, fire was a huge issue, a topic of discussion there. Also went to Douglas County and met with the district folks there, the counties that are a member of that particular district. Fire, again, was a huge topic of conversation. And next week, I'm heading out to Eastern Oregon, where I expect that we will have the same kind of conversations about what's been happening here in the West. The East has been getting pummeled with hurricanes, and we have been getting pummeled with massive forest fires that are really threatening our communities. So the discussion is starting to move to how do we manage our forests, and given the fact that the climate seems to be changing and the predictions are that we'll be having more of these catastrophic events, are we resilient in the face of these fires in the state, and how do we work with our counties, our other timber counties, to manage forests in a way that it's environmentally sound, but also has prevention in terms of the fire hazards that we're facing. One of the biggest disconnects that we have found is that there's a difference in policy between how the federal government manages fires in wilderness areas and how we, as a state, with our Department of Forestry and private landowners, manage fires. And one of the trends we're seeing is that the fires are starting in wilderness areas. They are not immediately contained, but then they start moving into these other areas of the state that are under state management, under private management, and they start to spread. So there's going to start to be, I think, with our delegation, federal conversations about what do we do? What do we do with that? Because certainly we want to maintain our wilderness, and we want to respect natural cycles, but I think people are coming to the conclusion that the natural cycle is out of whack. And, you know, again, whether you want to call it climate change or whatever, this is an issue that we're going to really have to address. So next week, I'm heading to Eastern Oregon. I'll be talking to our colleagues there. I'll be in places like Prineville and Enterprise. And I'm glad that I've been able, thanks to my colleagues allowing me to do so, to travel and really start becoming Clackamas County, be exerting leadership, not just in our own county, but throughout the state. And particularly, Commissioner Humbertson, I think the cross-laminated timber piece has to be part of this discussion because it's a new way of managing and harvesting timber that is purpose-driven. And if we can somehow help frame that, I think it will inform all the forest policies that we need to be addressing here in the state of Oregon. And with that, with housing, I did ask our Department of Human Services. The governor has put out a request for information. They're trying to identify gaps in workforce housing. And I did ask Richard Swift and Jill, our deputy director, to take a look at this Oregon Solutions Framework and help identify gaps in workforce housing. This is going to be a state-level analysis of where the gaps are with the eye to see how do we, again, solve that problem. So those are two big, and we did, I think Commissioner Fisher and I were in Mahoning Hall. Actually, Governor Brown invited women electeds from across the state of Oregon for a reception, and we had an opportunity to have our photos taken with other commissioners, and it was a great event. Okay, let me go to arts and culture activities in the county. All right. Nathan versus Holden on exhibit. Experience the beauty and wonder of the Pacific Northwest through the lens of local photographer Nathan V. Holden. The show runs through October 7th and is open for viewing during regular dealership hours. Thursday, Sunday, September 20th through 21st through 24th, 10 to 7 at the Findlay of Wilsonville Community Art Gallery. New Century Players present I Do, I Do. This intimate musical by Harvey Schmidt and Tom Jones follows one couple through 50 years of love, quarrels, and marriage. The touching story of two soulmates navigating the perils of life is set to a tuneful, charming score. Friday and Saturday, September 22nd and 23rd, 7:30 p.m., and Sunday, September 24th, 2 p.m. at the Rose Villa Performing Arts Center in Milwaukee. And also, just a quick reminder that Lakewood Theater is it's got cabaret running on through the middle of October, and I heard it's a fantastic production.
We have tickets.
What? You got tickets?
Oh, yeah.
Well, then you should tell me when you're coming into town. I'll fix you dinner. Okay?
Ooh.
You in room?
It's while you're gone, probably.
All righty. So for any other information, go to clackamasartsalliance.org. Okay.
Well, last night we attended a community leader meeting. We had a presentation on code enforcement and a presentation on the, I guess they're not, the pods, veterans pods that were in the process of building. If you have an opportunity to take a look, there's a sample one out just over here in our parking lot. The community leaders meeting was very good. I anticipated it'd be a little rougher than it was. It turned out to be pretty calm. It looks like we're doing a pretty good job. We also dedicated Hidden Falls Park, which is 20 acres in Happy Valley. There's a falls back in there. It's a beautiful site, thanks to the partnership with the developer. Can anyone remember his name? Icon Development. 20 acres. I'd say the Parks District did an outstanding job negotiating with the developer. It'll be a great asset for the Happy Valley community and for the Parks District. Again, you know, Happy Valley is withdrawing from the Parks District. I think it's a big mistake, and we wish they wouldn't. And this asset, however, would be theirs, and one that I think the community should appreciate. I'm also hosting Senator Merkley in Canby on tomorrow, I think. You might look up his website. It's at the Hope Village in Wilsonville. What else? You know, when we talk about highways, projects that have been successful. The Sunrise Project's been on the books for many years, and you mentioned we need to talk more about transportation. We are going to have a work session for you folks who are new, who haven't seen the Sunrise Project, Phase 2 and 3, and it's been a while for me. We want to make sure that, you know, that's still the county's priority. While 205 is very important, it's not our road. It's something that if the state had funded, the federal government was ready to help fund it. And that's really important. So we need to get that back up and everyone supporting again. We did at one time have the entire state AOC supported this I-205 as a statewide priority. It's now a national priority also. So I don't quite get why it didn't do so well in the legislature. And we have to go after our folks and make sure that it becomes number one. I doubt the 2018 session, which is a short session, it will be, but in 2019, we'll make sure it gets funded. Other than that, you know, there's been a lot of terrible storms across the Atlantic Ocean, and our hearts go out to those folks. Matter of fact, my vacation, which was in December, was in the Virgin Islands. The hotel no longer exists. And if you think about it, you know, it could be years before they recover. And some of those places, they may never recover. So my heart goes out to them. Also in the States, in Texas, Florida, all the damage, if you add it all up, I imagine it's trillions. And that's going to have a big impact on our country and various countries around the world on how we're going to repair all this. And hopefully there aren't any, well, there is still one more storm out there coming our way, and I'm sure there'll be more. The season ends around November, I think, the hurricane season. So hopefully there's nothing new. And with that, I want to wish you all a great weekend, and we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.